U slučaju Hrvatske ipak se računa ono što poduzima hrvatska vlada, a ne ispadi koje sebi dopušta predsjednik koji nema stvarne moći. Jednako diplomatičan u razgovoru za N1 bio je i predsjednik Ukrajinskog svjetskog kongresa, američki odvjetnik Paul M. Grod, koji nije zabrinut mogućim promjenama u američkom kongresu nakon izbora. Pogledajmo. What are your expectations on this conference here in Croatia?
First of all, this is an opportunity for the international community to address the key issues associated with Crimea's occupation. And it stems from, number one, security. It also stems, number two, when it comes to security, it's all kinds of security, including food security, which we've seen over the last several months has really impacted those most in need, especially in African and a lot of Middle Eastern and Asian countries. So the whole question about security is number one priority. Number two, it's also really critical that the world understand what is happening with respect to Russian disinformation and how it permeates. Sometimes it's very aggressive, sometimes it's very subtle, and we see certain things that are trying to continually undermine Ukraine. It's really important for the international community, for the parliamentarians of the world to come together to understand that, to hear from experts that are talking about how this Russian disinformation is trying to undermine the European unity.
But obviously Putin's escalation leads to even more determination in the West. But is it going to last through the winter? What are your expectations? Not only the harsh winter, but the elections in some countries.
I think that there's always a risk of Ukraine fatigue, but fortunately the international community has continued to stand behind Ukraine, and we see throughout the global media, the global parliaments, we see that the support continues for Ukraine. So we're not seeing any Ukraine fatigue. What we are concerned about is a harsh winter, but B, also a recession, because it'll be much more difficult for other countries to continue to fund Ukraine, both economically and with military support, if we are facing a global recession. So that's why it's really critically important that the international community give Ukraine maximum support today, maximum support now, so Ukraine can win the war quickly. Because as the speaker said, it's not a question of if they're going to win, it's a question of when they're going to win and at what cost and how long it's going to take. So the more support we get today, the quicker we'll be able to end this war and push Putin back out of Ukraine.
President Biden tries to rush even more help for Ukraine, but there is going to be tough elections in U.S. What about the possible changes in U.S. Congress?
There's the one thing we've seen in Congress over the last several decades is bipartisan support for Ukraine. We've seen that under the presidential administration of Donald Trump. We've seen that around. So the Congress has always been and will continue, we believe, to be united on Ukraine. And so I'm not concerned about that. Where we do need to focus is, number one, making sure that a lot of the Asian and African and South American countries are standing behind Ukraine, because that's where Russia is really trying to focus. They're trying to actually create a West versus everybody else attitude, and that's very concerning as well. The European bloc has stayed very secure. The transatlantic unity has been very strong. But what we are concerned about is Africa, Asia, and South America, and that's where Russia is really playing the game. And I think it's really important for the international community to work with our colleagues in Africa and Asia to help them understand that even being neutral is being on the side of Russia.
We have seen the recent voting in the General Assembly of the United Nations. Only 4 countries stood by Putin's Russia. But there are many more countries that stay neutral or saying they are neutral, but they are not.
That's the problem. There's too many that still are abstaining. We are seeing major powers like India and China now are starting to question Putin's strategy, and we're going to see, I believe, a demise in that support for Putin among some of those larger countries. And I think once China, India, and other large Asian and African countries start to side with Ukraine, then Putin's game is over.
We have a schizophrenic situation here in Croatia. Also, we have the president of Croatia who is saying something like trying to be neutral, but obviously undermining Croatian activity in helping Ukraine. What do you think about it? Did it reach your ears?
It did, and it's certainly we have heard it. We've heard it in other parts of the world, and I think anytime we see sort of a weakening of resolve, there's a concern. But I think that President Milanovic is certainly standing behind Ukraine. Always it becomes a question of tactics, and we believe that we'll see support both from the President, the Prime Minister, the Parliament of Croatia, because the Croatian people fully understand what Ukraine is going for. Perhaps more than any other country in the world understands what the Ukraine is going through today are the Croatian people, because you suffered your own, and we're confident that that resolve will continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.